Hi, family. My name is Jennell, and I am an alcoholic. Whew. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Stephen, for reaching out and asking me to share at this meeting today. Um, I'm kind of nervous. My sobriety date is March 30th, 1994, and for that, I'm truly grateful and blessed. I haven't found it necessary to go back out and test the waters. And you know, I was thinking about this day. I thought it was actually yesterday. And somebody said, Jennell, no, it's the 19th, not the 18th. So I'm glad I showed up because I was ready to speak yesterday. But today is today. And I'm just going to tell you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I'm born and raised right here in Brooklyn, New York, to a beautiful family. I have two parents, and I have a younger brother. And drinking um, was in my family. My dad drank, and my mom went to church. And growing up, I had everything that a kid would want. I had the new bicycles, I had the new clothes, I had the new toys, I had everything. I was loved. But there was something inside of me that felt like I had that irritability and I was discontent. And I had all the love that you would want, but for some reason I just wanted to do the opposite. And when I mean the opposite, like instead of telling the truth, I like to lie at a very young age. And I have no idea why. But then I do remember that when I started lying, it made me feel different. It gave me a rush. And I started stealing at a very young age. I liked the way that made me feel. And I remember I was about 10, 11 years old. And I remember I went in my grandmother's pocketbook and I stole $100. And I took this money and I went to the corner store to buy some bubble gum. Now the bubble gum only cost 2 cents, and I had $100 bill. And there was a neighbor in the store, and she saw me, and she said, Jennell, what are you doing with all of that money? And I told a lie. I said, well, my grandmother gave it to me. And she said, okay, we're going to see about that. And I remember she took me back to my grandmother's house and she asked my grandmother, she told my grandmother that I was in the store with all this money. And my grandmother kind of like co-signed it for me. And at that point I knew that I could do stuff and I really wouldn't get in trouble. So that was one instance. See, I had the behaviors way before I picked up alcohol. I was just getting ready. Um, I remember another instance. My grandmother and them used to smoke cigarettes. They loved what was that? Trenton. It was just some horrible cigarettes. They used to buy them in the cartons, and I remember I stole a pack of cigarettes, went outside with some friends, and we puffed these cigarettes. And I just like the feeling that the cigarettes gave me, and I love the feeling of stealing something and getting away with it. So fast forward, um as I was going to like middle school, I remember my mom would always send us to church. I went to Catholic school, and she would tell us on Sundays, we on Saturdays we'd have to go to confession. And I used to hate to go to confession, because you got to tell the priest what you did and stuff. And sometimes I would tell him the truth, and sometimes I'd make up stuff. And I remember on Sundays, my mom would send us to church, and sometimes I didn't go to church. I was with my brother. I have a younger brother, and I let him go to church, and I'd be outside with my friends. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. And by the time I was like 13, 14, I do remember before that, I'm gonna say like around 11 years old, I had a cousin who introduced me to marijuana. That was my first drug that I picked up. And I know it's Alcoholics Anonymous, but that was my first drug that I remember picking up before I picked up the alcohol. The alcohol came into play when I was about 13, 14 years old. And I remember I had some cousins that lived in Hackensack. And I remember I went to a barbecue, and they were drinking vodka and orange juice. And I remember I drank that, and I remember it hitting my belly, and boy, it went down smooth, and it just hit my stomach and splashed. And I remember when I was trying to come out of the van, somehow I slipped and I sprained my ankle. And that just taught me, like don't drink vodka and orange juice. Not that I shouldn't be drinking, but just don't drink that. It was just too strong of a drink. So after that, I kind of like gravitated toward beer and wine coolers. And and I remember I had a friend that lived around the corner from my grandmother's house, and I would go to her house and we could get high at her house. I love going over to her house. We could drink in her room, we could smoke cigarettes, and her mom would never bother us because her mother was bedridden. So that was like the perfect recipe for like us to just do whatever we wanted. And I remember sometimes her mom would call me into her room and ask me, like, Jennell, like, why are you hanging out with my daughter? She's such a bad influence and you're such a nice girl. Because I went to Catholic school, I wore the nice dresses, and I just didn't fit the picture. But I like to get high, I like to drink. And if you like to drink, I was hanging out with you. And but people were watching me, and I was already starting, up that ladder, just like I just started going, my stuff started progressing. So when I went to high school, I went to Catholic high school just for 1 year, and I had had enough of Catholic school, and I wanted to go to public school. So I came up with a good plan. And as alcoholics, we got some good ideas. So I decided to steal this girl's pair of sneakers. And I wore them to gym class too. And the nun had questioned me, and I denied the fact that I had stolen her sneakers. So that got me a ticket out of Catholic school and straight into public school. Now, when I went to public school, oh man, it was on, because there were people that drank, there were people that popped pills. I mean, whatever you were into, you could find it right there in the public school. And every morning we would get on the train on the New York City subway. And back then, people used to smoke on the trains. I mean, they still smoking it now, but they're vaping more. But back then, they would smoke on the trains, and we'd be in the back of the car. And I remember the doors would always open up, and all you could see is just a puff of smoke coming out. That was us hanging out in the back of the train every day going to school. And and while school was going on, I was just outside drinking and doing other things. And by the time I got to the 12th grade, I wasn't able to graduate because I had hung out and parties so much that I didn't have enough credits to get out of school. So, and I got pregnant with my first son at 17. So, when I was pregnant, I did not drink or do other things with my son when I was pregnant, and he was born, healthy, and he was okay. And so I had to figure out what I was going to do. And my family was so loving and caring, and they were my biggest enablers. And my mom and them said, well, we'll watch your son for you if you go to work, and do what you got to do. And once I got out of high school, I got my GED, and I got a job on Wall Street. And in Bill's story, he talks about how he had arrived. Well, at this job, I had arrived. I was 18, and at this job on Wall Street, we could drink for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. People would have cups of vodka and orange juice on their desk. Instead of having coffee in a coffee cup, there was alcohol there. So, like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow. I felt like the luckiest girl in the world. Like, I could drink, get drunk, and still go to work. Well, something started happening. I started like on Fridays I would get paid, and by Friday afternoon I'd have no more money. And I was trying to figure out what was happening, but what was happening was that I owed people so much money that I had to pay them back, and the bar tabs and all that stuff. So I didn't have much money out of my paycheck. So I got another bright idea. Maybe I could start selling some other things at work to supplement my income. Well, I became my best customer, and that idea went out the window. So I had another idea. Maybe I need to leave this job and go find a better job that's paying more money. So I left this job on Wall Street, And the next job that I went to was an advertising agency. And let me tell you, at an advertising agency, you have a lot of fun. They had 2 hour lunch periods. I was like, 2 hours? Do you know what you could do for 2 hours? Well, for 2 hours every day, I'd be drunk and high somewhere. I used to keep Visine in my pocket, and I would eat those things called no-dos. That was way before they had the Red Bull. I'd eat those things just to keep it up, keep it going, you know? And we'd have the after hour parties. I'd go to the after hour party, then I'd go to another party. And next thing you know, it's time to go to work. And I repeat this cycle all over. But I started having that money problem again. And let me back it up. At the advertising agency, we got samples of a lot of different products. So let's just say I tested a lot of different things like cold medicine and this and that. It goes well with alcohol. I just did anything and everything. So anyway, I'm having a money problem again. I leave this job. I find a better job. Now I'm working at a pharmaceutical company. Oh, party on. I do the same thing. I'm drinking, doing stuff, but something was starting to happen. The circle of friends and people that I was hanging out with started to get a little smaller because other people were going to work, go home to their families, but I still wanted the party to keep going. And after a while, I started getting tired of going to work. Like my alcoholism was like, yo, we need to take a break. And I decided to start temping, which I did. And I got a couple of jobs, and now I could go to work when I want to, but then the jobs dried up, and that was during the Ronald Reagan years. And the recession came, and there were no more jobs to be had. So now what am I going to do? I went on public assistance, welfare. And my alcoholism really, really took off. So now I'm drinking and doing whatever I want, however I want. And I'm living with my mom and dad, and I have my son, and my mom was my built-in babysitter. So let me fast forward. 1990. I'm in I'm in somebody's apartment hanging out, drinking, and I had a really bad cold and it really wasn't going away. And the people in this house, they said to me, why don't you go and get some help? Because you don't sound too good. And I went home and I told my dad I didn't feel well. And he took me to the hospital. And when he took me to the hospital, I remember I was hearing voices in the room, and there was nobody in the room with me. I was spitting up like this brown stuff. I had a fever of 104. And the doctor said to me, if I didn't get there when I did, I would have died because I had walking pneumonia. And then he said, and by the way, you're 5 months pregnant. So I tried to remember how I was pregnant because I didn't remember. And I did not look pregnant because when I drank, I just drank, and whatever food I would get would be potato chips, oodles and noodles, or little 25-cent bottled water, colored bottled water. Like that was my diet. So I had to stay in the hospital for 10 days, and they pumped me full of penicillin and everything, and I didn't drink. And I didn't drink for the rest of that pregnancy. And when my son was born, it was only by God's grace that he was born alive and he was healthy. And looking back at that, I know now that God was watching over me a long time, for a long time. But after I had my son, I went back to where I left off, continue to drink. And I'm living with my parents, and they getting really, really tired of my in and out and drinking and stuff. So we fast forward to 1994. In January of 1994, my dad got really sick. And my dad, I used to drink and get high with my father. And this particular day, he didn't feel well. He was going to the hospital. And he said to me, Jennell, promise me that you'll get yourself together. And I told him that I would. And my father, he died on January 24th of 1994. And I don't remember too much of going to his funeral because I was like wasted. And now I'm living with my mom and my two kids, and my dad is gone now. And I'm still doing what I want to do. So I remember one night I came in from being out in the streets for a while, and my mom met me at the door, and she looked at me and she told me that she was gonna make a phone call. And I got afraid, and I didn't know who she was gonna call that night. If she was gonna call BCW for them to come lock me up and put me in the G building, or was she just gonna call the cops to come get me? And that night I went to bed and I woke up and I said, I gotta do something about my drinking. And I remember I went to the Yellow Pages and I started looking for rehabs. And I found a rehab in this one place. I don't remember where it's at, but I called them and I told them that I drank a lot. And I asked them if they had a bed, if they could help me. And they said they had beds, but I had to be there at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I told my mom I found a place to go. And everything that came out of my mouth was a lie. So my mom was like, well, I'm gonna go with you just to make sure that you're going where you say you're going. And we we got we went to this place. It was in the city, it was up on a hill. And all I remember is that I got there at 9 a.m. and not 5 a.m. So the security guard said, Miss, we don't have no more beds. He said, you should have been here at 5 in the morning and not 9. So of course I did not go to rehab that day. So I'm still out there doing my thing, drinking, hanging out. And my mom's still threatening me with this phone call. So I went back to the Yellow Pages, and this time I found another rehab. And I told them that I drank a lot. And they said that they didn't have any beds at that time, but if you call us back, maybe something will open up. And I kept that piece of paper in my wallet. And in between being high and drunk, I would call them. And this one day I called and they said they had a bed. And at that moment, I knew that the life that I was living was over. I knew that I had to say goodbye to my old friends and that I was going away. And I just knew that I couldn't be friends with them because I didn't want to get drunk and high anymore. And I remember I packed a suitcase and I had all these dirty clothes because, see, when I drank, I did not wash my butt. I did not wash clothes. Didn't have time. So I packed a suitcase full of dirty clothes. They took me to this rehab in the city, and it's near Gracie Mansion. And it's on the East End Avenue up on the Upper East Side. And when I got there, I had to be about 90 pounds. I had dark, dark circles under my eyes. I had yellow fingertips. I had a scarf on my head. I hadn't combed my hair in about 6 months. My hair was matted. I didn't smell too good, and I thought I looked okay. And I had a hole that was in my soul. Like I just felt like a shell of a person. And I remember the nurse said that I was going to be okay. And I wanted to know, how did she know that I was going to be okay? Because I didn't feel okay when I got there. I felt I just felt dirty. I felt low. I was hopeless. And I remember she gave me a big book, a basic text, a living sober, a notebook, and a folder. And she told me to take those things to my room. So I went in, had a crazy roommate. She had all of these crosses around the room because when I came in, it was Palm Sunday. So like it was all these crosses. I was like, oh no, what's going on? But she was really a nice lady. And I remember every night Alcoholics Anonymous would come up to carry the message. And I want to thank anybody who does service in the hospitals and institutions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because that is where I heard the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I hated you guys when you came up, because you would come at 8 o'clock when all the TV shows were on. They put us in the day room and they'd be like, AA is here. And I was like, oh, they're such losers. Like, I just didn't believe y'all, you know. And you know, people would be up there telling their stories. They said they ain't drank for 5 years, 3 years. I was like, BS. I didn't believe none of that. But this one day, this man was telling his story. And I started listening. I said, well, wait a minute. I did some of that. And I hung out in those places. And I was so delusional. I thought I might have gotten high and drunk with this guy. And I asked him after he finished qualifying if we had ever hung out. And he was like, heck no. He didn't know me. But I didn't know that I was identifying. Rehab out of the 30 was going to make it. And I said, well, that one has to be me. Because I didn't want to go back to where I just came from. And they had said to me that if I didn't change the person that I brought into there, that same person was going to take me right back out. So I heard these things. And while I was in that rehab, I had some really crazy dreams and stuff. But I remember this one dream. I was in a room with some people in an apartment, and the shades were closed. And I remember I wanted to open up the shades, and I remember opening the shades, and it was a bright, bright light. And I wanted to go towards the light. And the people in this dream, they were like, close the shades, because they didn't want the light in. So I don't know if that was like God telling me, come on over, like come into the light, spirit. I don't know. But I looked at it as coming from a negative place, going to someplace positive. And I had another dream that I felt like a presence in my room. And it was just like rubbing my leg, letting me know that everything is going to be okay. And I felt that that was God too. And when I came out that rehab, I did what they told me. I went to a meeting, and they said, you know, make a meeting as soon as you come out. And where I lived, that was where I partied. You know, that was people, places, and things. So I remember I had a Walkman, and I put the headphones on my ear, and I went to a meeting. And when I got to the meeting, you know, people were happy and smiling, and you could see like the whites of their eyes, you know, like they were just happy. And I was like, how could they be happy? Like they're not drinking, you know, like really? But and I thought my life was gonna be over. But what do you know? My life, it actually began, you know. And I went to the meeting and they showed me the meeting book. They circled all the meetings in the book, and they told me these are the meetings that we go to every day, Jennell. We want to see you go to these meetings. And I said, well, I don't know if I can go every day. And somebody said, well, did you drink every day? Did you get high every day? I said, yep. They said, well, you can go to a meeting every day. And you know what? I must have made about 120 meetings in that 90-day period. And what I started to realize, or I didn't know, that I was actually starting to build a foundation. Because I had heard people say that there are going to be storms that are going to come, and if your foundation is weak, you will fall. You will go back to drinking. And I didn't want to go back to where I just came from, because where I just came from, like the end of my drinking, I was hanging out in abandoned buildings with people doing things that I did not want to do. I was saying yes when I wanted to say no. So I didn't want to go back there. So I started listening to you guys. Now I saw the steps on the wall and I was like, that's a lot. You know, I thought that I could do the steps cafeteria style. I like the first step, I like the 12th step, and I didn't want to do any of the other steps in between. And I've learned that the steps are in order for a reason. But it's the first step that I need to do 100%. And that's what I've been doing. for the last 29 years. The first step, 100%. And the other ones, I work on those. And so in my first couple of years of sobriety, I stayed on the first three steps for a really long time. I did not do my fourth step until I got to my fourth year. I don't recommend that for anybody, but that was my process. And my sponsor would say to me, when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, you're going to stop doing those things that you're doing. Because I was still acting as if I was still drinking without the drink. And I had all the isms, my character defects. I was just living in them. And it took me to go to a big book study meeting when I had moved to the Bronx. And I remember this guy, Arthur, he had said to me, Jennell, when are you going to get with the program? And I said, well, I am with the program. He said, no, you're with the fellowship. He said, the program is in the book, the first 164 pages. And he said, you got to do that fourth step. He said, that's the program. He said, you got to do it. And I've heard over the years that if you don't do a fourth, you're going to pick up a fifth. And I didn't want to pick up. So I went home and I did the fourth step. And I called my sponsor and I said, I'm ready to do this fifth step. And I remember I went to her house and she was washing her dishes and stuff. And I was like just reading, off the fourth step and, talking to her. And she was like, She was like, yep, I did that too. And she said to me, Jennell, none of this stuff is unique. She said, if it has a name, somebody's already done it, And I was like, holy moly. So like, I didn't feel that bad, once I was able to, tell her some of these things that I had done. And then I didn't understand the fourth step. Like, why did I have to tell God? Like, doesn't he know already? But there's something about telling God and another human being, and then just like looking at it in black and white, you know. And then I began working on the steps 6 and 7, my character defects, and I didn't understand why I needed to like have them removed, like why can't I, but no, those were survival skills that I had. And in here, I've got some principles that I live by today, like honesty and tolerance and patience and love. And those are the things that I replace with those character defects. And steps 8 and 9, making that list. And I had to make my list from my fourth step. And there, I didn't have a lot of people on the list, but I've learned that anyone that I came into contact with when I was drinking, I harmed them. And I'll give you an example. In my 18th year, I was trying to get in contact with a girl that I grew up with, and I wanted to make an amends to her. And somehow I was able to get in contact with her, and we met up at Atlantic City. And just before I was getting ready to make an amends to her phone rang, and it was her mom. And her mom said, she told her mom that she was with me. And her mother said, oh, that's Jennell. Does she still get high? And at that moment, I realized that I owed her mom an amends too. And that's when I really saw that, this disease, it affects anybody that I came into contact with. So I was able to make that amends to her. And then in my 8th year, I'm going back and forth, but in my 8th year, I found out that the person that I thought was the father of my second child was not the father. And what I realized is that my drinking, because of my drinking, I was out there doing a lot of stuff, and I was trying to find who my son's father could be. And I contacted a couple of guys that I thought maybe I might have been with and stuff like that. And they took the DNA test and it came out that they weren't. But this one guy, I remember he said, "How's my son doing?" And I was like, "What?" And and I said, "Well, would you be willing to take a maternity test, DNA test, you know?" And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So I was getting ready to go through with it. And then he called me and he said, "Well, if it's my child, you're going to have to be my woman." Now, this guy was a drug dealer. I'm in recovery. I don't want a boyfriend as a drug dealer. I was like, nope, 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 nope. So I had to ask my sponsor, what do I do with this? And she was like, Jennell, she said, know that God is his father and you are his mother. And I had to leave it just like that. But see, I got to tell my son something. And I didn't tell my son that I didn't know who his dad was until 8 years ago. And I didn't know how he was going to take it, but I just told him my truth. And and he was a little angry, he was a little sad, but he still gave me a hug. And he and I have a beautiful relationship. And you know, a part of me wants to know like who his father was, but then another part of me is like, you know what? I'm okay today. You know, I'm the sober mom, and I show up in his life. And sobriety has taught me how to show up in his life. And there are a lot of things that I might not be able to correct, but I can still work on these things, you know, and that's relationships with my children. So that was something that, you know, came to light. I mean, the longer you keep coming, the more stuff will be revealed. Like they say, more will be revealed. The slogans are my favorites. Okay. When I can't think of a step, I think of the slogans. So, you know, sobriety for me has been a journey. And a lot of things have happened to me. You know, we just this past September 11th, I was I'm a survivor of September 11th. I was in Tower 1 that day. Um, I worked on the 37th floor, and I remember that day as if it was yesterday. It was a beautiful, beautiful day. I was in the office and I was typing on my computer. Actually, I had sent a real nasty email to my coworkers because I'm a timekeeper and nobody had sent me their time card yet. And I remember I sent it to them, and the building had gotten hit. And I remember the building shaking, and my computer went from left to right on my desk. And while I was in there, um, I started to pray, and you know, the voice. I got quiet, and I heard a voice, and it was like, you know, get your stuff and leave. And I remember going out into the hallway, and I didn't know really which way to go because we really didn't do like fire drills and stuff at this job. So I didn't really know the layout of the trade center at that time. But I got quiet again, and the voice had told me like walk to that stairwell over there. And I remember going to the stairwell, and I saw all these people going down, and I knew that I really couldn't fit in there because there was just so many people. So I saw another stairwell, and I went in there. And I remember I got all the way down to the ground floor, and I didn't know what to do. And I thought maybe I should go to my home group because my home group is Exchange Views, which is down in Lower Manhattan. And I thought about going there. And again, the voice, you know, it got quiet, and it was like, go home. And I remember I got on the train, and I lived in the Bronx at that time. And I made it to like, I think it's South Bronx. And the train stopped. And I remember coming out of the subway, and I called my brother, and my brother was crying because he had saw the towers and they had fallen, and he thought that I was in there. And I was like, no. I said, I'm here. I said, I'm in the Bronx. I'm trying to get home. And And all of my family, they thought I had died, but I was okay. And I remember going home, and I just was like in shock. And but I didn't drink. I didn't have a desire to drink. I didn't want to drink. I just didn't know what had happened to me, but I didn't want to drink. And I went to meetings after, and being at the meetings, I was able to just sit and listen. I didn't talk much after it had happened. And I remember there were some people that I did know that were part of the meetings and stuff, and some of them went back out and drank, but I didn't have a desire to. And I owe that all to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I just listened to that inner voice. And it wasn't until like maybe a year later, I was at a retreat because I love going to Graymore retreats. And we had this one day, this one evening where we had to put on our pajamas and go in the chapel. And it was in that setting that I was able to let go of the feelings and the things that I have felt for that day, and just leave it right there. Because my sponsee was saying, like, when are you going to talk about it, Jennell? And it's like, I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't talk about it for a long, long time. But I'm okay with it today, and I know that a lot of people died that day, but a lot of people lived and survived also. And I'm a survivor. And I was able to attend a few a few panels and things where they would talk to us and ask us questions about what happened to us that day. And some of the information that we were able to give, some of the buildings now, part of the buildings, fire codes and different things, they have to like incorporate those things because of our experience. So something tragic that has happened to me is still able to help people, in a positive way. And that's what I feel like in Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, I drank, I drugged, I did a lot of stuff, but you know what? I can share with somebody that it does get better, and that, my story is my greatest asset. I live a good life today. I follow the 12 steps. To the best of my ability, I try to help another alcoholic. And let me tell you, today, for some reason, I was checking my email and I got a Venmo of $30. And I didn't know who the person was. And I said, well, I got to give it back. And I was like, who said that? Because me, you know, if I could get something for free or get over, it's like, yeah. And then I was like, no. So I didn't respond to the email that came. I went to my Venmo account and I went to the customer service and I said, hey, somebody put $30 in my account. I don't know who it is. It said for Molly and So-So's date or fair. I don't even know who these people are. But I told him, I said, please take the money back. And that's sobriety. You know, I try to be as honest as I can because I can be dishonest. I can activate that at any time, but I practice not doing those things. And I just laughed to myself, but I said, somebody's looking for this $30 and it's not their account and they need their money. And I'm good, so I just try to live a good life today. I have a grandson who is 8 years old who has never seen me drunk. And I believe that God has given me a do over with my grandson because I was the mom that was not available for my kids. I wasn't there. I didn't do a lot of things. And I get today to do things with my grandson. games, I trained, I rode on some carnival ride that was spinning around so fast I felt nauseous. So I was like, oh boy. But these are some of the sober things that I get to do. And he loves me and I love him. And I'm just so grateful that God has given me a second chance at life. It's not too many of us make it, you know. If you're here today, you are a miracle. If you didn't drink today, you're a miracle. This program works. It's a simple program. You know, we come in, we get a sponsor, we talk about what's going on, we get into the book, the first 164 pages, and then there's beautiful stories in the back of the book. And we just learn. And, you know, it's a process. I learn every day. Every day God wakes me up, I get a chance to learn what to do and what not to do. And everybody in here is an example for me. So I just learn by seeing what I see and hearing what I'm hearing. Like I learn from each and every person in here what I want to be like and what I don't want to be like. I don't work this program perfectly, but I work it to the best of my ability. And the relationships that I have today are beyond, like, they're just amazing. My mom, I didn't like my mom when I was drinking. She used to hide my bottles. She used to steal my weed. She didn't steal it. She was throwing it out, but she was protecting me. And today, my mom and I, we are the best of friends today. We have a relationship that she tells me all the time I'm the daughter that she always wanted me to be. And my mother's big into her church, and she always will let them know when my anniversary comes. My daughter's been sober for 20 something years. Like she tells everybody. And one time one of her church members had wanted to call me because her son is struggling with drugs and alcohol, and she called me and she was like, "Can I pay you to come over here and talk to him?" And I was like, "No." I said, "You cannot pay me." I said, "I can talk to him." I said, "But it's up to him because, you know, only I can say I'm an alcoholic. You know, nobody else can. Only I have to do that, you know." And I told her, I gave her some suggestions about Al Anon and some other things that she could try. And I just prayed for him because you know what? Somebody prayed for me. My mom prayed for me all the time. My mom, she told me that she used to anoint my clothing before I would go out into the streets because she didn't know what was going to happen to me, if I was going to come back alive or they were going to find me somewhere. So my mom was always praying for me, and I know prayer works. When we say our prayer at the end of the meeting, that serenity prayer, we're praying for people to come in here because it's not getting any better. I watch the news, I see outside, and I just go to meetings and I hear what people is going through, you know, coming in and coming out. And you know, I heard one speaker, forgot his name, but he said, you know, I may not be thinking about a drink, but a drink is thinking about me. And I like that, you know. Some days I'm not thinking about alcohol, and then alcohol poof pop into my head, but I don't go with the second thought because I don't want to die today. You know, alcohol still kills, and I have to be very, very vigilant. I like to go out a lot to clubs and hear live music. I love jazz. I volunteer for a radio station, and sometimes there's a lot of stuff going on, and you know I have to see, you know, what's going on, how I feel for that day. Is my spiritual condition good? You know, I've learned in this program that I can say no. You know, no is a complete sentence. No, I don't want to do that. You know, and it feels good to stand up for myself. Um, I also belong to a bicycle club. I ride a road bike, and I have a good time doing that. I volunteer for that, and I've learned how to get along with people by coming here and getting along with you guys. Like I carry what I've been taught here out into the world, and I think that's what Bill and Bob wanted us to do, was to just share this message with other people. And not all of my friends know that I'm in recovery. They just know that I don't drink, you know. Some have asked me why, some don't ask me at all, and it's okay. And whenever I feel that I need to break my anonymity, I'll do it, you know, hoping that maybe I can help somebody else. So I'm just really grateful to be here tonight. I'm glad that I was able to show up. My internet is not too bad because it was acting up earlier today. I was like, oh gosh, well, I have to go to McDonald's and do this. Because I got a friend who's like, I was in the McDonald's parking lot doing the message. I was like, okay, okay. But so far, so good. So I hope that I've been able to help somebody here tonight. And, if you're new, just stay, get some phone numbers, call people. I remember we used to like have the little meeting books and people would write their names and on the back of the book. And they told us to keep quarters in your pocket, and keep candy in your pocket. If you feel like drinking, eat some candy and call somebody. And today we got cell phones, so there's no reason why you can't connect with anybody. And we got Zoom. You can make a meeting at any time of the day or night. There's no reason why you wouldn't want to do it. So just stay connected, clean house, help others, and just love one another. That's all. So I'm just really glad that I was here tonight, and I hope that I've helped everybody here tonight. So thank you.